Yes, the people from all nations will pay homage to the Lord God in His sight and presence, because your righteous actions, your just actions, the effects that you produce, which are righteous, were manifested, caused to be evident, brought forth. The answer to this question is, of course, none. No person or spirit. And we'll read about that in chapters 21 and 22 of Revelation as we progress after the implementation of the final judgments. Continuing in Revelation chapter 15 and verse 5. John writes, "And after I saw, or after I perceived these things, the events," which he just wrote about, recorded in verses 1 through 4. "In addition, the interior temple, the innermost part of God's temple, of the tent of witness, the covering or the sheltered structure pertaining to the witness that God provides for His people, that attestation, that gives the authentic information and knowledge." John writes, "After I perceived, in addition, the interior temple of God, of the tent of witness, located in the heaven." So he sees the interior temple of the tent of the witness in the heaven was opened. It allowed him to see what was inside. "And the 7 angels went out from the interior temple, having the 7 strokes." And we saw that in verse 1. So these 7 angels went out from the interior temple, having the 7 strokes, who had been clothed, or they had clothed themselves, with a clean, who was free from any bad foreign mixture, a clean and shining, it was bright, brilliant, radiant, beaming light. It was shining, what? A flax garment, or a linen cloth, which was made from flax. "And they had girded a golden girdle around their breasts that was in front of them." So a girdle, of course, refers to a length of linen that was worn around someone a little above the elbows, and it was about 3 to 4 inches wide, and so it would wrap around them a few times, tied, and then it would hang down towards the feet. So these were golden girdle around their breasts, around their area, just above their elbows. "And the 7 angels remained girded, and one from the 4 living beings." Now we saw regarding the 4 living beings back in Revelation chapters 4, verse 6 and 7. "One from the 4 living beings gave to these 7 angels 7 golden bowls, or 7 broad or flat vials made of gold." So one from the 4 living beings gave to the 7 angels 7 golden bowls, being full or stuffed, as a ship is stuffed with freight, being full of the rage of God, God's rage. Emphatically and specifically, the living God. Yes, God is living, and He'll still be living at this time when this occurs. The rage of God, emphatically and specifically, the living God, into the ages. God remains alive into the ages, all of the ages, forever, for eternity. "And the interior temple of God was full of smoke." So the innermost part of God's temple was stuffed or full of smoke. And of course, this smoke is the evidence of God's presence out from His glory. So the smoke that was in the interior temple that filled it was coming from God's glory, His splendor, His renown being evidenced, and from His ability, His capability. It evidenced that. And not one was continuing to be able, in other words, no one, no person, no spirit was able or had the capability to come or to go into the interior temple for the whole duration of time, up until the point when the 7 strokes or the 7 blows of the 7 angels would be completed, until the time that the implementation of these 7 blows from the 7 angels would be brought to its ending issue. It would be accomplished. It would be completed. Continuing in Revelation chapter 16. And we can note that the details in Revelation chapter 16 verse 1 through chapter 18 verse 24 pertain to the effects or events taking place on earth as a result of and corresponding to the previous events which took place in heaven. And we looked at that in Revelation chapter 15 verses 1 through 8. So now we are looking at the record of the implementation of the 3rd woe on earth, following the 7th angel blowing his trumpet, previously in Revelation 11, verse 15. Let's begin in verse 1 of chapter 16. John writes, "And I heard a great sound, a large voice," or I heard a voice loudly, "from the interior temple," the innermost part of God's temple. That's the source of the voice or the sound that John heard coming from the interior temple, saying to the 7 angels, "You must go, lead yourselves, go, and you must pour out. It is imperative that you shed forth, pour out the contents from the 7 bowls, or those 7 broad and flat vials." And what do they contain? The rage of God. Where are they to pour out the rage of God from the 7 bowls? Into the earth. That is the whole earth, the land or the ground, including the sea. And what happened? And the first angel went away and shed forth or poured out the contents of his bowl into the earth. And there became or came to pass a bad. Now something bad is what is contrary to God. So this something bad and evil, it was exercising badness. It was malignant. So it was bad and evil, what? Boil. A boil is a sore, or like an ulcer. You know, it's a festering wound, an inflamed abscess. So bad and evil boil down on man. Emphatically and specifically, the men having the character mark of the wild animal. So this boil did not affect every man or every human on the earth at this time. But it does affect who? The men that have the character mark of the wild animal, that savage beast of prey which is not tamed by mankind. That's the same beast referred to in Revelation chapter 11 verse 7, 17 verses 8 and 11, and also we looked at that previously in chapter 13. And they are the same men who are worshipping its image, paying homage to the icon or the representation of that wild animal.